Hello Internet, welcome to another NPC faction guide from Cataclysm Dark Days Ahead. This episode we're going to be continuing to talk to the Isherwood family. This is your one and only opportunity to step away if you don't want spoilers. And today we're going to be meeting Eddie Isherwood. Now Eddie is my least favorite member so far in the Isherwood family, mostly due to one of his quests, and we'll talk about that at length as we get there. But yeah, just letting you know it's not going to be a super fun episode because this quest is pretty miserable. So Eddie is located in the southeastern part of the Isherwood farm, and it's a dairy. And he's located in this little farmhouse. And again, just like everywhere else, there is stuff here to loot. I would not really recommend it. Some of it is marked as stealing, some is not. So we'll talk to Eddie and say, hey, what's up, man? How's it going? He'll say, hello, sir. What brings you here? We'll say, oh, it's a nice dairy. It must be hard to keep it running. He'll say, well, I run this dairy with my son, Luke. It's been a tough job keeping the herd together. Hasn't left a lot of time for other projects. We have the option to ask him about Barry, saying, oh, that's a tragedy. Can you tell me more about what happened? He'll tell us that Barry and Carlos went to hunt down something that killed our livestock. They tracked it into the forest. It grabbed Barry and ran off. Carlos might be willing to tell you the story he managed to allude to. He managed to elude it, as in escape from it, so they used the wrong elude there. I am noticing, so this is not me bad-mouthing this is me encouraging you as the viewer to possibly do something. There have been a lot of typos in the Isherwood farm, I've noticed, some bad grammar here and there, and if you're looking for something easy and simple to do as a new contributor, this would be a perfect opportunity for you. All you need is a GitHub account, and you need to be able to search this dialogue so that you can correct some things. So for instance, again, here allude, this is like in reference to, we're looking for ELUDE, which is to escape from something. So pretty easy, a great way to earn your contributor badge on Discord or wherever. If you start making small contributions like that, they do add up, they do help the project, and you can take some pride in having contributed to what is an amazing game. So basically it grabbed him and ran off, and he managed to escape. So we already talked to Carlos, and he told us this story, so we have a pretty good idea of what took Barry, and we'll go back and reference that, I think, in our Chris episode. But for now, we're going to back out and continue talking to Eddie Isherwood, because today is all about Eddie. We'll tell him that Jack and Claire suggested I come down and meet him, and he'll say, yeah, I could use some help getting materials. I want to outfit this old building across the road with some kilns. We want to make our own jars and pottery so that we aren't dependent on scavenging. Pretty basic, pretty reasonable goal, and he'll give us a job, and he'll ask for 120 rocks to construct some kilns. When we accept the quest, he'll tell us that we can break up some larger stones or gather them up from the fields. If we ask him for advice, he'll tell us that mining is always an option if you have the resources. I've never mined in Cataclysm, I don't think, so not exactly something I'm interested in, but stones are very easily gotten these days anyway. Before we run off and gather the stones for him, I thought I would continue to explore his dialogue. We have the option to ask him about his son helping with the dairy, and he'll say that Luke was going to start college this year, but everything is upside down now. He is adaptable though, and had the idea to begin manufacturing our own jars and pottery. He's out in the old outbuilding right now cleaning up the place, and we of course will give Luke his own episode here in the near future. We can also ask him about Jess, and he will tell us that Jess manages the horses and the other livestock. She's amazing with animals. I think Eddie is the brother of Claire, and therefore is Jess's uncle. I'm not 100%. The whole time that we've been doing this, I've been struggling to really pin down how the family is related. Some of it's obvious, some of it's bluntly stated, but I forget things very quickly. We also have the option to ask about Carlos, and he'll tell us that Carlos will be in his workshop if he isn't out hunting. He's trying to get a forge set up. Again, we've already met both Jess and Carlos. Other than that, we have the option to trade with Eddie. Currently, just like the other shopkeepers on the farm, he only has available what is on his person at the moment, and will unlock more materials as we do quests for him. So for now, pretty lackluster, nothing really to trade. Well, at this point, we should probably go get some rocks. We need 120 specifically. As he stated, it is possible to find them in fields, so if you use the capital V menu, you will be able to find nearby items. and it will point out any rocks in the area. This is very slow going. This is what it used to be like trying to find rocks in the game. However, we've had a lot of updates since then that have made rocks a lot easier to get. Specifically, most forest tiles now contain a huge variety of boulders. In general, I will craft a homewrecker. Homewrecker is my go-to because it's a craftable weapon with a high bash damage. And we're just looking to smash these boulders. Small boulders and medium boulders are usually smashable at 10 to 13 strength with the homewrecker pretty easily, and you'll get a handful of rocks for each one. Now, like I said, they're very plentiful in the forest, very easy to find. The large boulders are not able to be smashed at reasonable strengths with the homewrecker. And if you don't have a homewrecker, that's okay as well. If you have a sledgehammer or really any weapon with a high bash, because in order to smash things in Cataclysm, it is a combination of your current character's strength combined with the bash damage of the weapon they're wielding. So boulders are no problem, and it didn't take me very long at all to gather up our rocks. This is good to know as well if you're trying to make a kiln or furnace of your own, and once you've had them all gathered up, just head on back to Eddie. Now, it can be a little difficult transporting such a large number of rocks. If you can't handle it, just haul the items or take them in batches into the room. It seems to count nearby items, so you don't actually have to have them in your inventory. You can just drop them at Eddie's feet, and that will count for the trade, or for the completion of the quest. When we return, Eddie will ask us if we've accomplished our mission, and we'll say sure. And Eddie will give us 12 smoked meat and a 3-liter glass jar of milk. This is okay reward. It's better than some that we've gotten, but we'll talk about that in a moment. Eddie will say, I appreciate it. This will make Luke happy. I could use a hand with something else if you're interested in. For now, we're going to say, not right now. We're going to back out and take a look at his trade menu to see what is opened up. And you'll see he now has the option to sell us smoked fish or smoked meat. I'm not really sure why smoked fish have a higher cost than smoked meat. Smoked meat has more calories and is generally just better than smoked fish, so I don't really understand why it's almost double the price for a piece of fish. Seems like something that maybe needs addressed because fish, it's just not even, I just don't really understand why one is more expensive than the other when they should both be reasonably around the same price. And then additionally, the milk itself, I guess, is valuable. It spoils so quickly, and I generally play as lactose intolerant characters, so I don't really see a value to the milk because of that short spoilage timer. But I'm sure someone out there probably would be grateful for getting what is essentially a gallon almost of milk. After comparisons, I headed back to Eddie to pick up his next quest, and he'll say he has another job for us, and will tell us that now that he has a forge set up, he could use 2,000 units of sand to get production going. 2,000 units of sand. Now that sounds like a lot. This is actually pretty easy to do. We'll tell him that we'll do it, and if we ask him for advice, he'll tell us that we can find it along riverbanks or maybe in landscaping supplies and hardware stores. You can harvest sand on your own. I decided to just dig up some nearby ground tiles to see if that gives you any sand, and I was rewarded with about 5 sand after digging 2 pits. This, to gather 1,200, is obviously absurd. We would never do this. We obviously don't want to do this by hand, so we're going to head to a nearby hardware store and see if we can find some sand there. It took me a while to find the right hardware store. Some hardware stores have the outside area in the back, and that is what I was looking for because that generally contains construction supplies. Eventually, I found one and hopped the fence to get in there and have a look around. And what I'm looking for are these canvas sacks. In this tile set, they appear to be canvas sacks. Some of them are cement, some of them are fertilizer, but some of them are bags of sand. Each bag of sand contains 500 units of sand, so we need to take Eddie 4 of these sacks from the hardware store. Now, at first I thought this would be a pretty uncommon thing, but once I got to the hardware store, I actually found 13 bags in this one hardware store. So even if you're playing this at a later date, once they've implemented the loot changes so that loot goes down over time, you're still pretty likely to find at least a few bags in any given hardware store. Again, I found 12, maybe it was 13, I don't remember, but it was quite a lot, much more than we needed. So this is by far the most reliable place to find sand. Hit up a hardware store, look for the ones with the outdoor area in the back, and just grab a few sacks and throw them in the back of your car. Now, I wasn't terribly satisfied with this because I wanted to at least test the riverbank sand method, so I headed out to a riverbank and looked around for sand. To my surprise, sand is actually not that common even at the riverbank, so I had to look a fair distance before I actually found one. I initially started by digging in the dirt, but that's not how you do this. You are looking specifically for the sand tiles. You can dig up the sand directly using a shovel, which is the not greatest method of doing things, and by doing this I got 16 sand. However, if you go through the construction menu, there is an extract sand option, and this will actually give you several hundred units of sand, which is obviously much more substantial. So don't dig the pits with a shovel, use the extract sand method from the construction menu. In this one action, I got 312 sand, and it just went up to about 900, I think, before I depleted the sand tile. So if that's something that's available to you nearby a river, you can actually harvest it manually this way, although transporting it is not as easy as just throwing a sack in your trunk, and certainly it takes more time than just going to your local hardware store. Similarly, there are like home improvement stores specifically that may have some sand in them. I was not able to find one in my area, so I didn't actually test that. Eventually, I was able to return to Eddie with our sand, and he gave us 6 butter and a sealed 3-liter glass jar of milk. Once again, he's given us dairy products, which makes sense in the construct of him being in a dairy farm. But ultimately, as a lactose intolerant character, that means I got 0 reward from this quest. Not to mention the fact that, again, the milk and things rot so quickly that it's almost not worth it at all. He'll say, "Thanks, now Luke and I can get started. Here's a token of my thanks. If you're interested, I have another job for you." And you might be thinking, "Oh, Murder, you complained about his quest. These seem pretty reasonable so far." Well, boys and girls, we're about to hit the speed bump. We'll ask Eddie about his next job, and he'll say, "Now that the clay kiln is set up, we could use 1,000 units of clay to get production going." 1,000 units. Yeah, sounds totally reasonable, Eddie. I'm going to get right on that. I'll be back. But surely it won't take me very long. I'll be back in 45 minutes with your clay. We'll tell him we'll do it. We'll ask him for advice. And he'll say you can find it along riverbanks or maybe look for deposits in the forest. So, there are a few ways that you can find clay in Cataclysm. Most of the time, you don't need very much of it. You can dig small pits in the ground, and you will occasionally find small amounts of clay in the results. So most of the time, you're going to get soil, but there's a small chance that you could get some amount of clay. This is generally a very small number. On average, I seem to get 3 to 6 pieces from digging in the ground. I guess it was almost exclusively 3, actually, now that I'm thinking about it. So I don't know what the actual range is. Alternatively, there are actual clay tiles in the game. They appear at both the forest tiles. They seem to be very rare at forest tiles, or they appear pretty frequently along the river. So if you're looking for them in the forest, you might explore quite a lot without actually ever finding any. But if you do find it in the forest, it tends to be very clustered together and easily accessible. If you don't have that option, you will have to go to a riverbank. In the riverbank, they're much less frequent. You'll usually find 1 or 2 every, so often that you walk along the riverbank. And they're not really closely clustered. They're kind of strewn here and there. I did go back to the hardware store in hopes that maybe there was clay there. I could not find any. I went back to, there is a craft store in the game. I checked through that a fair bit, and I found some clay, but not really enough to satisfy the request. Remember, we need 1,000 pieces to take back to Eddie, and when I explored the entire craft shop that was devoted to pottery, I found about 13 lumps of clay, so a very small amount. The only way you're going to get clay in this massive amount is to go out and harvest it yourself. So I headed off to the old riverbank and thought, okay, how hard could this be? Just like the sand, there is an option inside the construction menu that will let you extract clay from clay tiles. When you do this, according to another simulacrum, you should be getting on average around 9 lumps per harvest. That was not my experience. I almost always got around 6 lumps per harvest. And each harvest takes about 30 minutes. So, pulling out my calculator here, let's do some quick math. We need 1,000 lumps of clay for Eddie Isherwood. On average, I was getting about 6 lumps of clay per harvest. This is just my observation. Again, I was getting 6 almost exclusively when I harvested, but according to another simulacrum, the average is actually higher than that. But even if we give this the benefit of the doubt and say we get 10 per harvest, these numbers are still ridiculous. But for the purposes here, I'm using what my average was, which was 6 lumps of clay. So if we divide 1,000 by 6, we'll see that we need to harvest clay 166 times. That's going to take a minute. Oh, wait a minute. That takes 30 minutes per harvest, so we need to multiply 166.6666, whatever, times 30 minutes to get an idea of how long this will take us. So I multiplied that by 30, and I got 4,980 minutes of just harvesting clay. Well, how many hours is that, I wonder? Oh God, 83 hours of exclusively harvesting clay. So you're telling me that in order to fulfill this quest, which is probably not going to have a very satisfying reward, I need to spend about 4 full in-game days harvesting clay just to get the number required for the quest turn-in. It's a bit ridiculous. Now, they did tell me of a faster way of doing this. I didn't know this at the time, but basically if you go to where there are clay deposits and you set up using the Zone Manager tool, you can set up a construction, and you can tell that construction to be the extract clay option. And then when you use your sort zones, the capital O menu, it will let you work on that construction, which will continually harvest you clay, so you don't have to worry about constantly pressing the buttons yourself. So this definitely helps the process because it's much faster. It's much more hands-off. You don't have to worry about it. And you can select a large area for the construction, which means that you can select multiple clay tiles so that even if they get exhausted, you can continue harvesting clay. Even using this method, 83 hours is absolutely ridiculous, and I think it needs to be changed. I did complain about this on Discord. Some people recommended that I go make that change myself and set it to something more reasonable. So basically what I think happened is that somebody was building these quests and they said, oh, what's a good reasonable number? Well, about 1,000. But what they didn't do is actually go out and do it manually to test whether or not that was a reasonable number. It happens. People do that kind of stuff all the time, and it would have been tedious to go out and harvest 1,000 pieces of clay. But if the creator had done that, they would have realized that that's an absurd amount to ask for the player. And so people on Discord said, hey, that does sound kind of broken. Why don't you go fix that? I don't really feel comfortable editing other people's works. I would feel bad going in and changing, like the typos and stuff we discussed. That's not a big deal. But I would really hate to go and just completely change numbers in someone's quest. Obviously, someone put a lot of love into Isherwood Farms, and I just wouldn't feel comfortable doing that. So we're just going to roll with the number that's given. We're not going to bank on it being changed. We're just going to assume that you need 1,000 chunks of clay. So unfortunately, that's going to take you several days of work. Either way, you're going to need to do it if you want to complete the quest. And I eventually just debugged the clay. What is funny is that even if I haul the clay, it actually hauls them all one at a time. So with 1,000 clay, moving one step actually takes 10 in-game minutes. So if you're going to do this, I would recommend you just pick up as many as you can, walk them in, drop them, go back, pick them up, walk them in, drop them. If you're concerned about the passage of time, I don't know if it's any faster, but that's probably how I would have done it in the future, just because moving took so long. But we'll turn in our quest to Eddie and really cross our fingers that he has something good, because at this point we've invested many days of our life to harvesting clay. We'll go to Eddie. We'll say, we did it, Eddie. We got everything that you needed. And Eddie will give us a short rope and Daisy, who is a cow. And that's all you get. And he'll say, thanks. Now Luke can start making jugs. We'd like to give you a cow. Here's Daisy. Take good care of her and she'll provide you with milk. And oh my God, I can't tell you how much, as a lactose intolerant player, how annoying this is to get a cow. But ultimately, right, cows are pretty valuable creatures. They provide milk, and long-term food and things. So maybe it's good for some people, but I wanted to test if there's an easier way to get a cow. And it turns out that there are cows at this dairy farm that you can just go feed fodder to and they become your cow. So all that work we did could have been circumvented by just going up, getting some fodder from like Jess's farm or wherever, feeding the cow, and now magically you have a cow. So all that work we did was for nothing as far as I'm concerned. And I feel like this quest really needs to be looked at and should be improved upon, because I think this is a running theme. I know we've already talked about it, but with this particular faction, it seems like the rewards I get from the quests that I do is never commensurate with the work that we're doing. When I did work for the hub, it was always like I felt pretty satisfied with the raw reward. Maybe that's just me, but when I played this quest in particular, I was so disappointed that if you're a lactose intolerant player, you get nothing out of this. I think at the end of the day, you get some dehydrated smoked meat and you get a short rope. That's all you get as a lactose player. So, pretty disappointed in that. I would have loved to have seen literally anything else. I would have liked just something a little bit more meaningful to come to us. I guess, helping the family is only so good in my opinion. I would like more value other than role play. I would like tangible rewards, even if it was just like, oh, hey, here's a bunch of chits. So here's some stuff you can use for trading with the family. Literally anything would have satisfied me more. And my first thought was like, oh, give us meat. But, it's a dairy. It's not a ranch. I get it. Maybe they don't kill the animals. But, like, you got to give me something. I was so blown out by how terrible this quest was. I griped about it on Discord. I just don't see a real value to this other than roleplay. If you're trying to accomplish all of their quests and satisfy the Isherwood family to the fullest possible way that you can, then absolutely do this quest. If you don't hate yourself and you don't want to do a bunch of tedious garbage, skip that quest. There's no value from that quest as far as I'm concerned. I'm so inclined to just murder this cow and eat it like you don't even know. But I don't want to sit here and bash it the whole episode. So that's a wrap for Eddie. There's really nothing else to say about him. In the next episode, we'll talk to Luke and see what he has to say. And then eventually we're going to get to Chris, which will be the kind of capstone of the series, I think. So for now, thanks for watching. Sorry I'm so negative. It just really frustrates me with stuff like that when you put in a ton of work and don't get a satisfying reward. And I think that's going to do it. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.